Hmm.
That class makes me sad every day.
Is it every day or just when Nykirk's in charge?
No, every day. And I really hate that the society robs us of our childhood by making us look forward to adulthood our entire childhood. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Blah, 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 blah. All that. And then it's just money. That's the
Yeah.
entire adulthood.
No, completely agreed. And like, I am glad that we're doing this kind of stuff with you just because like it was the same way for me growing up, but like I had no idea about money or anything. I feel like I'll probably be in debt the rest of my life because nobody ever taught me how to deal with money. Nobody ever taught me anything about cars. But like, yeah, my parents will get upset with me because I don't know how to do something. And I'm like, no one ever taught me.
Yeah.
That is the thing. And societally, I've come to realize, every generation, I mean, basically, like the older generations have higher expectations for the newer generations, is what I realized.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Let's see, that was today the 15th. Yeah. I don't know what I just wrote. This was not a dumb moment, this was a typo, but I accidentally just said it was the year 2032.
We're not there yet.
Not quite.
I'll be old.
2032. That's 11 years from now. I'll be old.
No, you won't. I'll be old though.
If you're gonna be old, I'll be really old. You'll be like, you won't even be my age now. Wait, is that right?
Let me do a little math.
Yeah, you will not even be my age yet.
Hunter, you're gonna be like 29.
Yes, exactly. I'm gonna be 29.
That's a good age to be. 29's fun.
I'm gonna be 18 in 27 days.
Oh wow.
Yes.
That's what date is that?
October 12th.
October 12th. October's such a great month. You're so lucky to be born in October.
I know, it's the best.
The Libra.
Libras are the best. That's what I'm saying.
Y'all are.
Wait, Jay, what's your birthday again? I keep forgetting.
February 16th.
That's
Got it.
right. 10 days before mine.
We're
We-
swaggy.
We'll have a class party.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's gonna be so powerful.
It will be powerful. Let's see. Oh, your birthday is on a Wednesday. Mine's on, oh, my birthday's on a Saturday this year. Maybe we'll,
Lucky.
I know. Maybe we'll have a class party on that Friday. So it could be like the midway point between our birthdays. And Fridays are always
Okay. So true.
Where's Marilyn?
Maybe they didn't join immediately since it's not technically time for the class yet.
Yeah, maybe not. And Alyssa wasn't in the last class. So I don't know. There we go.
I don't think Alyssa's been to any of the classes all day, actually.
Hope she's okay. Yep, there's Marilyn. I'm gonna go ahead and mark Alyssa absent. Although now I'm wondering, before you guys got on the Zoom call, Nykirk was like, who all is here? And I was like, it's just me so far. And he's like, oh, okay, because I'm pretty sure that some kids are not going to show up because I told them that they were going to like present their budgets today. And sure enough, like I know a couple of the people that he intended to ask and they didn't show up. So probably because they didn't do it. But I asked him if it was a grade and he said no. Or he was like, well, I didn't tell them that it was, so I can't hold them to that. I was like, you could give them participation for doing it or not doing it. But I guess it's nice that it's not a grade. Okay, well, we're gonna go ahead and get started. If Alyssa joins us, that's awesome, but I don't know that she will. I emailed her early this morning actually, and never heard back from her. I got to school at 6:30 today because I was just like, I really need to catch up on grades and get some work done. And I never feel like I have time during the day. So I just got here like almost 2 hours early to get stuff done.
It sounds horrible.
It was not great, but no traffic at that hour. That's nice.
That's true.
So looking on the bright side. Okay, we are going to look at chapter 7 today of the book, which is one of the better textbooks I have ever seen. Also, just so you know, I did update the grade book. So it's accurate right now. I have made comments on the discussion post that y'all have done so far, but mostly my comments are just to tell you, like, this is one of the things on the checkpoint list that you didn't do. Because truthfully, if you do all the things, it's so easy to get a 10 out of 10 on those every time. Like, I'm not going to count off points because I don't agree with what you said, or I didn't think it was smart or something. If you write roughly 200 words and you quote something, you quote the textbook or whatever text that you have, whatever text we're writing about, and you cite that quotation, and it's your own work, then you'll pretty much get 10 out of 10, unless it's just like incomprehensible. I have had students do discussion posts before where I'm like, I literally don't know what you're trying to say. And then I might count off some for content, but for the most part, it should be pretty easy. I also think maybe, I know that y'all, I've given you the IXL work as sort of optional, and I know that most of y'all aren't going to take that, but maybe once we read through new grammar sections, maybe I'll start like kind of doing a few things on IXL together, just to kind of like get us in the right frame of mind, because the quizzes haven't been bad so far, but they haven't been great. And I certainly don't want those to start dragging you down. That being said, you're going to be getting progress reports next week, and whatever your grade is at the end of today, I think, that's what'll be on the progress report. But we have lots of discussion posts and lots of quizzes in this class. So if you feel like you're not happy with where your grade is right now, there's still plenty of time to bring it up. And I think that you can bring it up. We haven't even done our first essay yet. And that's going to be much more heavily weighted than the quizzes or the discussion posts. So if you're not happy with where your grade is, don't fret about it too much just yet, because there is time and it's totally recoverable. Although I don't think any of you are doing terribly, but just probably not as well as you would hope. Okay.
In class over IXL, I'm sorry.
You what?
If you see me crying in class over IXL, I'm really sorry.
Okay.
That was the first thing I had to do in middle school, not gonna lie.
If you have to cry, you have to cry. No shame.
It progresses you super slowly, and then as soon as you get one wrong, it sends you back so far.
Yeah, that is kind of annoying. Oh, 6th period attendance. There we are. But it's so useful sometimes. I used to like to challenge my students, and we would start one of the sections at the same time and see who could hit 100 first. There was one kid who insisted that he beat me on one, and he never did. And to this day, he'll tell people that he wrote about it in my yearbook, actually. He's like, remember that time I beat you at a positives? So annoying. He didn't beat me. He could never beat me. Okay, let me get to our textbook. Also, I don't think this is going to happen next week or anything, but at some point in the next several weeks, we'll have a visitor in our class. I have to be observed because I'm an adjunct instructor for Trident Tech, and so they just have to come and observe me and make sure that I'm teaching the right stuff. And so I just got in contact with her today, and she said that she would come on a Monday or a Wednesday, but she didn't say when. So I don't think it'll be next week, but at some point we'll have a visitor. However, I said that a couple of years ago. I told my students in this class that I was going to be observed, and I kept saying, what was that guy's name? Roger. I kept saying Roger's going to be here on Wednesday, and then he didn't come. And I was like, okay, well, Roger's going to be there. And sooner or later, Angelina Robertson especially was like, you're making up Roger. Like, Roger is not a real person. I was like, I promise he's real. But like, he canceled a couple of times, and that was when we were downtown. And then he came one time. He was like, I got an email from him like halfway through class, and he was like, I tried to come observe you today, but I couldn't find parking downtown, so I turned around and left. I was like, you turned around and left when you're supposed to like come observe me? And he never came to observe me. I don't know if he just like fudged the paperwork and was like, she's fine, but he never came to observe me. Never once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I kind of wondered if he got in trouble because of that, but I mean, I didn't mind. I don't really love having a stranger in my classroom, but oh well. Wonder whatever happened to him. Okay, chapter 7. Writing processes. Ooh. I'm going to share my screen with y'all in just a sec. I'm just flipping through this a little bit. Oh, is it all on one page? Yes, it is. The whole chapter is on one page. That's interesting. Sorry. Okay. This is about writing processes. We've got our two little quotes up here. Bell Hooks, that doesn't even sound like a real person's name. The function of writing is to do more than tell it like it is. It is to imagine what is possible. And also not a real sounding name, Nipsey Hussle. If you've got a process, you have a list of things to do to get to your goal. Okay. So I love their little introductory paragraphs. This is very, like, I feel like a writing instructor wrote this. Do you knit? Play video games, do yoga? If so, you're probably accustomed to following a process of some kind, whether it's for making socks, playing Fortnite, or doing a downward dog yoga pose. The same goes for writing, whether it's a thank you letter after a job interview, an email to a teacher, or an essay for a class, you follow some kind of process. Hey, we just talked about that. This chapter will help you make your way through the process of writing from a blank page to a finished text. Think of it as a GPS that will help you navigate the many choices you have along the way and direct you to places in the book with additional detail if you need it. Okay, cool. So start with questions. Whatever your topic or purpose, start out by asking questions. Even if your purpose is to solve some kind of problem, don't just go looking for answers. Whatever the task, approach it with an open mind. If you already have some ideas about your topic, expect to find new ideas. Be curious, inquire, explore. Here are some tips that can help. If you already know something about your topic, what do you think about it and why? What more do you want to find out? Be aware of confirmation bias. Ooh, that's fun. A tendency to favor and seek out information that confirms what we already believe and to reject and ignore information that contradicts those beliefs. Kind of like how most of your friends on social media are probably similar to you, like in beliefs and like your own sort of personal code. And if you're just hearing the same thing all the time and people are agreeing with you, then you're not really hearing like the opposite side of something. You're just having your biases confirmed. Which can make you too quick to accept ideas that confirm what you already believe. Keep an open mind, ready to be challenged. You're sure to encounter viewpoints that differ from yours, and if you don't, seek them out. Take them seriously and be open to the possibility that they just might be right. Even if that's not the case, they'll get you thinking. Ask questions. What, who, how, where, when, why not? What are others saying about your topic and why? What else might be said and what do you want to say? Oh, we're quoting Disney. That's wonderful. think about your rhetorical situation. And I think Marilyn is the only person that was in my AP class last year that's in this class now, but we were quite familiar with the rhetorical situation. It's basically the circumstances that affect writing or other communication, like the purpose of the writing, the audience, who are they saying it to, the genre, is it a speech, is it an essay, is it an article, is it something from a textbook, stance, just what is your position, context, why is it being said, like if you're looking at a eulogy, for instance, the context would be this person's funeral. And media and design, we didn't really talk about those two in AP. Wow, I literally just said what all those things are, except for media. Like what media actually is it, and design, what fonts, headings, images, charts, graphs. Chapter 2, which I think eventually we will read. It's interesting to me that they assign these chapters out of order, but I guess they know what they're doing. Chapter 2 provides detailed guidelines for thinking about each element of a rhetorical situation, but you'll want to keep your audience and purpose in mind from start to finish of whatever you're writing. And that's very true. Whatever you're writing, think about, who am I writing this for, and what's my purpose in writing it? What am I actually trying to argue? Generate ideas. Once you have a topic, it's time to learn what you can about it, to think about it and start writing about it. So here's some techniques that can help you think about and generate ideas. Free writing. Love free writing. Free writing is so fun. That's a technique for exploring a topic through writing. Just start writing quickly without stopping. Some writers find it useful to free write for 5 or 10 minutes. Others find it works better if they write until they fill a screen or a certain number of pages. Don't worry about your spelling or grammar, just write. Your goal is to come up with ideas, and the more the merrier. I actually love to do that with people, particularly when we're studying stream of consciousness, which I do in most of my classes, and just like set a timer for 5-7 minutes maybe, and just write the whole time. If your brain goes off on a tangent, just write about that. Don't worry about spelling or grammar, anything. Just keep writing and see what comes out of your brain. It can be a lot of fun. Brainstorming is another one. It's a process for generating as many ideas as you can quickly. Again, don't worry about whether they're right or wrong or smart or silly. You can brainstorm on your own by just writing down all the ideas you have, or you can work with a group with everyone suggesting what ideas they have, as many as possible. The more brains, the better, and the greater the likelihood you'll discover a range of viewpoints. Alone or with others, the goal is to explore an idea and to be open to whatever it turns up, which is always a good thing to do for like group work. It's nice to kind of brainstorm together and hear what everybody's ideas are. Questioning is a good way to explore a topic and to get beyond what you already know or think about it. And it's easy. Just ask who, what, when, where, why. What happened, who's involved, where and when did it take place, how did it happen, and what caused it to happen. Do some research, and eventually we will. Not terribly soon, but we'll do research. Unless your topic is a personal one, you'll probably need to do some research. Wikipedia can be a good starting point, just as an overview of the topic, to give it a sense of the various perspectives that exist on it, and to list sources that you can check out. However, I'm just throwing this in here. If you're writing a research paper or something, do not use Wikipedia as a source. I may have said that in this class before, I'm not sure, but one of my favorite professor in college, I'll never forget him saying, if you use Wikipedia as a source, I will stab you in the heart. He said that. We're not allowed to say that to children, but he did. If you're writing about a current issue, you may want to check news articles or periodicals or do a keyword search. If you're writing about a topic from the distant past, you'll need to look for older sources, but you also may need to see if there's any recent scholarship on the topic. And if you're wanting to write about a local issue, you may want to interview experts or do some other kind of field research. For the record, and I'm not going to be concerned about this when we do our research paper, but if you wind up doing any professional research, most people do want you to use sources that were published within the last 5 years. And that's just the thing to make sure that you're not giving any out-of-date information. All of the research you're doing is up to date as much as possible. So start by thinking what you already know about the topic. What do you need or want to learn? What questions do you have? What have other people written about the topic? What are the various issues and the different positions and viewpoints? We'll have a great database for that, actually. Check facts and claims. If something seems questionable, check it out. If you see a claim that sounds too good to be true, chances are it's not true. Search the web to see if anyone else is saying the same thing. If not, it may not be true, or maybe you can find several sources that say exactly the same thing. Check them out. Or are they all sponsored by a single organization? Even if sources look real, don't assume they are. Fake sources are usually designed to look legit. Come up with a working thesis. I can't wait to work on some theses with you guys. At this point in this fictional research that we're doing, or this fictional thing we're about to write, you should be ready to write out a thesis, which is a sentence that identifies your topic and the point you want to make about it. Rarely, if ever, will you have a final thesis when you start drafting, but establishing a tentative one will help focus your thinking and any research you may yet do. Here are some prompts to get you started. Oh boy, but look at this. What a gross thing to say. In this essay, I will. Don't do that. Write out the points you want to make. Plot out a working thesis in 2 parts by first stating your topic and then making a claim about the topic. So I see what they're saying. Like, this is not a good thesis. This is just like in pre-writing, you could say, this is what I want to talk about. But then you want to actually like work on your thesis and state your topic. Your topic is quitting social media in this case, and then making a claim. If you quit social media, it will improve your ability to focus, eliminate stress, and make you happier. Be sure that your claim is debatable and that it matters. I wish they had some examples of ones that weren't, or ones that didn't matter. There's no point in arguing for a claim that's a fact or that no one would disagree with or that no one would even care about. Let me think of an example. You wouldn't write a paper saying that, arguing that America won the Revolutionary War. We just did. Like, there's no 2 ways about it. There's nothing to debate there. Now, you could write a research paper having something to do with the American Revolution, but you're not going to be just arguing that we won the war. That's just a fact. Or that no one would even care about. I can't think of an example there because I think a good writer could make even a very mundane topic really interesting. So I don't know of a good example for that one. Think about whether you need to narrow or qualify your thesis. You don't want to overstate your case or make a claim that you'll have trouble supporting. Adding words like generally or sometimes or saying might or could rather than will can make your thesis easier to support. Like, quitting social media could help you sleep better, might make you more productive, and may even make you happier. And then in the body paragraphs of your essay, if you were writing about that, you could go further and explain like why it might or might not. Does the thesis tell the readers what's coming? Will it help keep you and your readers focused on your message? And will it interest your readers? At this point in your process, this is a tentative thesis, one that could change as you continue to do research and write and revise. Continue exploring your topic and don't stop until you feel you understand it well. But once you're confident that your thesis makes a claim that you can support and that will interest your audience, gather up the notes from your research. This is the information you'll draw from as support for your thesis. So, the next thing to do is to write out a draft. And we just read, I can see now like this is how this ties into the other thing that we read on Monday about shitty first drafts. Once you have a working thesis, you'll need to organize the evidence that supports what you're claiming and to start drafting. I do think it's really smart actually to craft a thesis first so that even your first draft is focused. You're not just kind of like word vomiting onto a page. You've got some kind of, you've at least got a center that you're trying to work your argument around. If you're writing a narrative, you might tell a story in chronological order. This happened, then this happened, this happened. If you're making an argument, you might present your evidence in order of importance, starting with the information that's most important and then decreasing as it goes. And if you're describing something, you might organize it spatially from left to right or top to bottom. I'm trying to think of like an example of when you would just be writing to describe something. I guess if you were just writing like some kind of, I don't know what you'd write that for, but if you were describing like what this building looked like, you could either go from like, you could start upstairs, you could start in the front office and kind of like describe it as you walk through it. I don't really know why you ever would do that though. Different ways of beginning. And at some point we might go over another presentation that Marilyn will have seen last year about intros, thesis statements, and conclusions, because it's a really good presentation. But this is what it's about basically. Ways of beginning. The way that you begin a text can grab an audience's attention, or it could not. You want to make them interested in what you've got to say. So here are some things that you could do, some hooks, some techniques to write a hook. You could start by quoting or summarizing something others have said about your topic. You could start by telling an anecdote that will get your audience's attention, by posing a provocative question. That's actually how this chapter started. It said something like, do you like to knit, play video games, go scuba diving, or something like that. You could just state your thesis right up front. You could use a startling fact or statistic or visual. And there's more on that in chapter 22 if you're interested. And then you have to worry about organizing your evidence. Whatever your thesis is, you need to provide good, reliable evidence to support what you say. The good news is that the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle long ago developed strategies for finding such support, strategies that will serve you well, both for finding evidence and for organizing it into paragraphs in the body of your essay. So here are some strategies for doing that. Description. I'm sure whatever English classes you've been in before, you've talked about imagery. Anytime we can describe something in a lot of detail and really put it in the reader's mind, whether it's how it sounds or smells or feels or tastes, you're really connecting with the reader, and that makes an impact. Good descriptions provide concrete details that create some kind of dominant impression that helps your audience imagine what you're describing, and that engages their interest. And they have a little example there, but we're not going to do it. Oh, but this is a good example. Like in a report on climate change, you might describe some recent hurricanes or severe droughts that are thought to result from those. And in a narrative, you'd likely describe people, places, and things. While you can sometimes describe something using words alone, there may be cases when you need to include an image to show what you're describing. If, for example, you're writing an art history essay about the architecture of Barcelona, which, by the way, is amazing. I'm not even into architecture, and the architecture is like the main reason I want to go to Barcelona. I did a project on it in high school, and I never forgot it. You might describe the multicolored mosaics, stained glass, and glazed titles of its music hall pictured on the next page, but could you do so in a way that would enable your readers to visualize it? I think this would be hard to describe and really put a picture in the reader's mind without actually using a visual image. You could describe like the arches and the gold statues and stuff, but it's just not going to give you as clear a picture as if you actually saw it. Whereas if you're describing like, well, what's Maya Angelou describing up here? A group of people gathered in a store to listen to a prize fight on the radio. That could happen anywhere, and it's easy to imagine. So giving all these details does put the image in our mind, whereas this is a pretty unique thing. You don't just go around seeing this building everywhere, so you would really need an image to convey what it looks like. Narrative. Oh shoot. According to Tyrion Lannister of Game of Thrones, probably one of the top 3 best characters in that show for sure. He says there's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story. He says that in the series finale. Exactly. A good story told well can engage your readers and provide memorable support for an argument. In a book called The Years That Matter Most, Paul Tough writes about the growing inequality in US colleges and universities, supporting his argument with stories about how this inequality affects several students he interviewed. He tells about Clara, whose parents pay $400 an hour for her ACT tutoring to help her get into Yale. Good Lord. About Kim, who gets no support of any kind, financial or emotional, from her family when she goes to Clemson, and about many other students as well. All narratives that provide powerful support for Tufts' argument. You can use narratives to good effect in writing. You do as well. In an essay argument for universal early childhood education, you might include a brief narrative about your own childhood experience in preschool, or you could add several anecdotes about athletes you know who have suffered concussions and a report on head injuries in football. I could do that. I know a football player, or he played football in high school, and he had 7 concussions in the time that I knew him. Once you have 1 concussion, you're a lot more likely to get another one. They really tell you to be careful. Be sure, however, that any story you tell supports your point and that it's not the only evidence you offer. Comparison and contrast is another method. When we compare things, we focus on their similarities. When we contrast them, we look at their differences. These strategies can help support what you say, explaining something that's unfamiliar by comparing or contrasting it with something more familiar. In a blog post, arguing that the use of singular they is inevitable, for example. Oh, this is interesting. Linguist Dennis Barron compares it with the singular you, pointing out that it too was originally plural, but eventually became singular as well. That's really interesting. I wonder what they used before you became singular. Like, I wonder.
Interesting. I guess maybe they just use names, but like using a name while directly speaking to someone is really weird.
Yeah, and if you were saying even just like a mother to their kids saying I love you, would they be like I love you, or I love Richard? Like, if you're Richard, well, like, I don't feel like we could function without the word you.
Maybe they would just say like mom or something, I guess.
Maybe I love mom.
That's
I know. And or like, what if in class I was addressing you and I was like, Jay did a good job. Like, you'd be like, thank Miss McClellan. Weird. I never knew that. That's interesting. But that's pretty relevant because it's been really only in the last few years that a singular they has become a point of contention, because a lot of people who don't identify as male or female would rather go by they. And a lot of people, particularly like linguists and people like that, and I admit I had a little trouble with it at first, was because we think of they as plural, and you can't be more than one person, but language changes all the time and we kind of have to adapt to it. Yeah, that's interesting. It eventually became singular as well. As a student, you'll often be assigned to compare and contrast things as a way of making some kind of point. The music of Philip Glass and Stephen Reich, the political philosophies of John Locke and Thomas Hobbes, 3 poems by Adrian Rich. There are 2 methods you can use for making comparisons. The block method, in which you discuss everything you have to say about one item first and then everything you want to say about another item, or the point by point method, in which you discuss one point for both items and then do the same for another point. That sounds a little bit convoluted, but actually I think that's a simple idea. It's just not explained well. Definition. A definition says what something is and what it is not. As a writer, you'll often need to provide definitions for words you use that your audience may not understand, and definitions can play another role as well, especially when you're writing about controversial topics. If you define abortion as killing an unborn child, but your readers define it as a right for women to have control over their own bodies, they're unlikely to agree with any arguments you make. And that's a good point, particularly if you're writing like an academic essay where you want to take the emotion out of it so that you can effectively convince your audience of whatever you're saying. You don't want to like yell at them about something, however you might feel about it personally. You want to convey your points in a logical manner. And so for that kind of thing, it is best to sort of define that up front. Like, this paper is going to be talking about, well, you wouldn't say this paper is going to be talking about, but you would say, like, from here on out, we're using the definition of abortion as a woman's right to have control over her own body or whatever, because you don't want to just alienate part of your audience if that's not what they believe. You can use examples. Good examples bring a subject to life, making abstract ideas more concrete and easier to understand, and providing specific instances to back up a point. I don't want to read this. Sorry, I just don't want to read it. But he gives a lot of examples in order to help us understand what it means to live in the United States as an undocumented immigrant. Examples could be presented visually. Oh. Infinity room. Well, now I'm interested in this. You could describe this artist's famous infinity rooms with words that they have mirrors on the walls and ceiling and a floor and a reflecting pool, that they include hundreds of lights that change colors and so on. But if you want readers to get any sense of what an infinity room is, you would also want to provide a photograph. You know, honestly, even the photograph, I don't feel like it's doing it real justice. Not that I've ever been to it, but I can imagine what it's like. And I just don't feel like this photo is doing it a ton of justice. Classification is the next one. When we classify things, we group them into categories. Books, for example, can be classified as fiction, nonfiction, fantasy, poetry, picture books, etc. As a writer, you might use classification as a way to organize a text or to elaborate on a topic. If you're writing a presentation analyzing films for a course on the history of films, how fun would that be? You might organize your text by classifying the films by genre: dramas, thrillers, comedies, musicals, and so on, and then discuss them genre by genre. But you could classify them in many other ways as well. Netflix, for instance, now classifies TV shows into dozens of categories, among them feel-good TV shows, crime TV shows, family watch together TV, and quirky sitcoms. The categories you choose will depend on your audience and purpose. Netflix actually gets so crazy specific with their categories. They'll be like strong female lead or
Black lead.
Black lead, yeah. Weekend drama binge, stuff like that, or like 90s hits or something, 90s nostalgia. Very specific. Cause and effect. When we analyze causes, we try to understand and explain why something happened. Why have there been so many wildfires in recent years? Why did Tom Brady leave the New England Patriots? And when we think about effects, we speculate about what might happen. How will the COVID-19 pandemic affect the global economy? How will the Patriots do without Brady? As a writer, you'll sometimes need to cite causes or effects. In a literacy narrative about deciding to major in English, you might focus on the books that caused you to love literature, or on particular effects that will serve you well in the future, the ability to write well, for instance. Arguing about causes and effects can be tricky because it's rarely possible to link a specific cause to a specific effect. Consider what we know about what's caused so many people to become ill from vaping, or the long-term effects of climate change. In each case, there are many possible or probable causes and effects. When you write about causes and effects, then you can often only argue that they are likely or probable. And one reason that you'll want to qualify what you say by using words like might or could is to limit what you claim. And that's just to say that, like, something like smoking could increase your risk of cancer. It doesn't mean that everybody who smokes will get lung cancer. They don't. My grandpa actually smoked for decades, and his doctor literally asked him one time, what brand do you smoke, because I'm going to start, because his lungs were so clean. So it doesn't happen all the time, but you know, there's a very strong correlation. Like, he was definitely the exception to the rule, but that's why you would want to use language like might or could, just so that you're not directly saying like, this will definitely happen if this thing happens. Consider counter arguments and other perspectives. Unless you're the first person to write about your topic, many others will have opinions about it as well, and some of them will have ideas that differ from yours. If you've done your homework, you'll be aware of what else has been said or will have thought about it. You need to acknowledge other perspectives and to do so respectfully and accurately. And you need to respond to any counter arguments, objections that others may have to your position. Whether you provide evidence refuting ideas you take issue with, admit that some other position just might be right, or qualify what you yourself say. Acknowledging other perspectives demonstrates that you've done your homework and that you've considered opinions other than your own carefully. In a newspaper profile, okay, I might actually read this one because I love Adam Sandler. In a newspaper profile of Adam Sandler, Jamie Lauren Keels acknowledges that not everyone agrees with those of us who love Big Daddy and his many other zany films, and admits that such criticism is sometimes fair. And she says, critics as a group hate Sandler comedies, sometimes fairly, but just as often because the movies undermine the project of close reading altogether. If you don't think a Sandler comedy is funny, no amount of thinking on the page is ever going to convince you otherwise. It either tickles your funny bone or it doesn't. That's fair. That is fair. I love that movie though. So ways of concluding. Your conclusions where you get to wrap things up and to leave your audience thinking about what you've said. Here are some ways of doing that. Reiterating your main point. And keep in mind, it doesn't say restating, it's reiterating, because you don't want to literally use exactly the same language that you used in your introduction. By issuing a call to action. Like if you're writing about the dangers of underage drinking, you might want to finish by saying we should raise the drinking age or something like that. By saying why your point matters, like in a bigger sense, in a big picture sense, or by inviting response, inviting people to share their own thoughts, depending on what kind of thing it is that you're writing. Okay, coming up with a title. Titles are important. On the one hand, they need to tell readers what your piece is about and give some sense of what you're going to say about it. As an author, however, you'll want to come up with a title that will get your readers' attention and make them want to read on. Whatever your purpose, you should always think about your rhetorical situation when deciding on a title to be sure it will appeal to your audience and reflect your stance. Some titles simply indicate the topic, and that's probably what you're most used to doing. If you're writing about your life as an undocumented immigrant, you could just call it My Life as an Undocumented Immigrant. Other titles could be more provocative, saying something surprising or asking a startling question. They tend to show a stronger point of view, like have smartphones destroyed a generation? Is Google making us stupid? I think that might actually be a thing we're reading later in the year. That's a real article. Get a knife, get a dog, but get rid of guns. I'd be curious to read that. Some titles include a subtitle, usually to explain the title or indicate the author's stance, like For Better or Worse, Spotify and the Music Industry, or To Siri with Love, How One Boy with Autism Became BFF with Apple Siri. Again, I'd be interested in reading that. So getting responses and revising. One good thing about writing is that you don't have to get it right the first time. Unlike, say, a brain surgeon, you can always do it better. That's for sure. And a good step to doing it better is to get a little help from your friends, for sure. Once you have a draft, you'll want to get feedback from some readers. Here's a list of questions for reading a draft with a critical eye and thinking about how it might be revised. So this is just worth thinking about, like after you write an essay, kind of going through this list and thinking, how does the opening get your audience's attention? Does it make it clear why your topic matters? Is your point stated explicitly in a thesis? Have you provided sufficient reasons and evidence to support that thesis? Do you need to qualify it? Have you noted any counter arguments or views other than your own? And if so, did you present them accurately and respectfully? Have you cited any sources? Have you clearly distinguished these outside sources from your own argument? Is the text organized in a way that's easy to follow? Have you provided transitions? Does the text include any visuals, or should it? How does the text conclude? What does it leave readers thinking? And does your title announce the topic and give some idea of what you have to say about it? Once you've gotten feedback and read over your draft yourself, put it aside for a day or two if you can. The above questions will have identified plenty of specific things to consider as you revise, but please be sure to keep your rhetorical situation firmly in mind as you work, especially your audience and purpose. You want to make it as readable as possible and to be sure that everything in the draft contributes to your point and purpose. Take seriously any advice you've gotten from other readers, but don't feel that you have to do everything they suggest. You are the author. I'm just going to skip ahead for a second and see how much more we have. Barely any. Okay. Editing. Okay, so Cheryl Strayed wrote the book Wild. She wrote another one too. I can't think of what her other one is called. But it seems like she's rather cautious when it comes to her writing. She says that she writes to find out what she has to say, and then she edits to figure out how to say it right. So she just kind of like dumps it all and then goes back to clean it up. Once you've written and revised what you want to say, you need to fine tune your text to be sure that it says precisely what you want it to say, and that your readers will be able to follow and understand what you say. So here's some tips. Editing paragraphs. Check each paragraph to be sure it contributes to your point in some way. Does each paragraph focus on one point and include a topic sentence that tells readers what it'll focus on? Is it developed in enough detail? Are any of them too long? Could you split them anywhere? And pay special attention to your introduction. See if it grabs your audience's attention, and your conclusion to see if it solidifies your messages. Then you can go even closer and look at individual sentences. First of all, and we were talking about fragments and comma splices and few sentences yesterday, be sure that your sentences are sentences. Make sure they start with a capital letter and end with a period or other punctuation, and they all have a subject and a verb. Check for sentences that start with it is or there is. That can be a good way of emphasizing or introducing an idea, but a lot of times it just adds unnecessary words. Their example here is, why would you say it is essential that we speak up rather than we need to speak up? And maybe there is a reason. Maybe it's better just depending on the context, but those are some places that we can be unnecessarily wordy. Check to see if you've used any unnecessary words like very or really. And we actually just talked about this in another class of mine yesterday. We were talking about how there are some words that are really overused, like really or very, and it's really, I just said it, it's preferable to just use a stronger word in the first place. Like instead of really pretty, you would say breathtaking. And that's a stronger word. Instead of like really neat, like neat, not messy, you could say meticulous. And those are just stronger words. Better to check and see if there's a stronger word that you could use. Count up the words in each sentence. If too many are pretty much the same length, see if you can combine some sentences, add some details, or vary the sentence structure in some other way. I will say, I don't think I've ever like written an essay and went through and counted how many words were in each sentence. I don't think that's necessary. But if you just kind of skim over them and see like, are all of my sentences very short? Do I need to combine some, just vary the sentence length a little bit? And the reason for that is mostly just to avoid monotony. I am somebody who writes really long sentences naturally. And so sometimes I'll go back and read something that I've read and it gets a little monotonous because the sentences just sort of go on for too long. So I need to learn how to break them up a little bit better. Pay attention to the way your sentences open. If sentence after sentence begins with the subject, try varying them by adding prepositional phrases or transitions. Again, that's just something that's like, if every sentence is like, she saw a dog, she went over and pet the dog, she picked the dog up, she set the dog back down. It's just a little bit boring and redundant. How could we switch that up a little bit? Like noticing a dog across the road, she walked over so that she could pet him, and then she picked him up. Something like that. That was a really bad example, but you get what I'm saying. Editing words, down a little bit further. Have you used any term that your readers may not understand? If so, be sure to include definitions where appropriate. Think about what tone is most appropriate for your audience and purpose. Serious, playful, casual, academic. Make sure that the words you use reflect that tone. If you have a super, like a formal academic research essay, you probably don't want to throw like a slang word in the middle of it. It would, I can't think of a good example, but like it wouldn't flow with the tone. Be sure that your language is respectful, especially when you're writing about a controversial topic or discussing positions you disagree with. Use words that demonstrate respect and not disrespect. My example there, and to be fair, this kid was in 9th grade when this happened, but I had a student one time who wrote an essay that was like about the dangers of smoking, and like in all caps in the body of the essay, he was like, if you smoke cigarettes, you are an idiot. I was like, all right, well, let's just pull back a little bit on that and maybe see how we can approach it a little bit more objectively, and not alienate some of our audience. Pay attention to your use of gender pronouns. And they specifically talk about if you're referring to someone who uses they or them or other pronouns, call them what they want to be called. In fact, I just saw a couple weeks ago on BuzzFeed an article that was, I can't remember which celebrity it was talking about, that had come out as non-binary and used they, them pronouns.
Demi Lovato.
It may have been Demi Lovato. That was my first thought. But the headline was something like Demi Lovato or whoever comes out as non-binary and not all of her fans are thrilled about it. And I was like, well, you just like, why are you reporting on it in the first place if you're not even going to use her preferred pronouns? It's so silly. But it's also just not respectful. And I'm sure that somebody, I don't think anybody did that intentionally, but I can't believe it made it through whatever editing process BuzzFeed has without someone catching that. Give some thought to design. We're coming up on the end here. You've written out a draft, gotten a response, and edited your text. It says what you want it to say. So think about what you want it to look like. If there are any design elements that will help your readers follow what you say. Choose fonts that suit your purpose and reflect the tone. Mostly you won't need any boldface or italics. If there need to be any headings, and it totally depends on what format you need this in as well. Because this chapter is kind of talking about like all forms of writing. Mostly what we're writing in here are academic essays in MLA format, but that's not specifically what the textbook is talking about. Is there any text that would be easier to understand if it were set off in a list? Would it be easier to see any data in a pie chart or bar graph? Are you including any visuals? Do you need any? And this is probably last. Don't forget to proofread. It's such an important one. And I would say read it out loud bit by bit. I agree with that. Make sure, check for consistency. Make sure that everything's in the same font with the same space above and below it. If you included any visuals, make sure that they're referred to in the text. Check for parallelism to be sure that all headings or all elements in a series or list have the same structure. Check your spelling. Depending on the format, like MLA, make sure that you're following all those things. And then take time to reflect on your own writing process. Just take stock. You can ask yourself these questions. What did you do well? If you had one more draft, what would you change about it? What did you find challenging? What kind of response did you get from anyone that you let read it? Et cetera, et cetera. I love Steve Martin. He's one of my faves. So, you know, I feel like most of that is not new information to you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing. I don't think it's new, but I think that's a really helpful chapter, and one that I would maybe even advise you to refer back to once we start writing essays in here, just because it does give you such a clear structure for starting to write an essay. Like, what do I do first? How, like, what are some different ways I can start getting my information? Well, it says right up front, you could free write, you could brainstorm, compare, contrast, whatever. It talks about crafting a thesis, doing a first draft, revising, editing, and gives you suggestions for how to do all of these things. So I really would, and I hope I remember to say that when I give you your first essay assignment, but I really would kind of take this chapter as a guide to help you through that. And that's it for today. I am gonna go ahead and sign off, and I will see y'all tomorrow. Bye.